Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and I am so very excited about today's guest and fellow entrepreneur because, quite frankly, I didn't actually confess this to him before we hit record, but I am convinced that this guy's work gets over one of the biggest hurdles and obstacles that all of us have in our businesses, and that is getting reviews. We always hear about the powers of social proof, and when any of us shop on Amazon, we know how much we take those reviews into consideration, and that's why I love and respect and admire today's guest's work because he has absolutely cracked the code, and he doesn't just do it for others. He has proven this model by growing successful businesses of his own, even leading up to this point. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Adam Melenkivitz. Adam is the founder of TestSquared, which is a platform that helps Amazon sellers connect with real product testers to generate verified purchases and honest reviews without breaking the rules. Before launching TestSquared, Adam scaled his previous company, Alpine Dam, from a local brand to, I think this is such a cool part of his story, to 15 retail stores across California and FBA warehouses, fulfillment by Amazon, in 7 states. He's also held roles at Thomson, NASDAQ, and the New York Stock Exchange. His mission is to bring integrity to the review economy, one product at a time. There's so much that we're going to learn from him today. I'm equally excited to learn from him, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Adam Melenkivitz. All right, Adam, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'm really excited to be on.
Heck yes, there's so much good stuff that we're going to get into. I think your work, to me, from the outside looking in, it seems like rocket science. Like, I don't know how you do what you do, but before we get into that, take us beyond the bio. Who's Adam? How did you start doing all these cool things?
I think it's twofold. One, I'm a consumer, and I shop and I read reviews, and I've always been frustrated with those. And then with my career, I'd always been in these positions of these highly regulated industries with these high ethical standards. And I was always around these innovative new companies, whether when I was at NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. And when I was at New York Stock Exchange, I wanted to start a business, and I love hats and things like that. And I started a soft good business, and I started writing Amazon. I didn't know anything. And what drove me crazy was that there'd be competitors on Amazon and they would have 2,000 reviews for a hat. And I was like, what's going on with these guys? That's impossible. Drove me nuts. It's back in 2016, I was really naive to it, but was able to build the business with some alternative and different marketing strategies while I was working, and gained these reviews. And then shut the business down because of COVID, because we couldn't get any material, which kind of stunk. And then back last fall, actually almost 2 years ago, started a little supplement company for fun and was getting crushed. And there's all these people with all these crazy reviews. And I'd go to Fake Spot, I'd put the SKU in there, they were getting Ds, 50% of the reviews are fake. I'm like, what is going on? And because of my career, I'm probably one of 7 people in the country that get the FTC little alerts and newsletters. And in October, the FTC was releasing a regulatory change where they were going to fine people with fake reviews $54,000 per infraction. And that was the genesis of TestSquared. I'm like, oh my gosh, we can stop this right now, and we can build trust so brands are operating on a really high ethical standard and the consumers trust them. So they brought some professional passions together, and they brought together some frustrations as an Amazon seller myself.
Yes, I love that overview because I'm just going to tack right onto that pain point because as a podcast host, as a content creator, that's the hardest thing. And Adam, you're absolutely spot on. I recognize how hard it is for new podcasts to climb up the charts. I mean, we've got a ton of listeners in over 150 countries. I, at the end of every episode, say, hey, if you liked it, leave a rating and review. And most people, 99% of people, listeners, I'm kind of calling you out, 99% of people just won't do it. And Adam, I think that when I started my podcast, past, I thought that reviews were just a natural byproduct. Be good at what you do and reviews will follow. What's so difficult about it? I'll call myself out here as well. I buy products from Amazon all the time. I've got an Amazon package a day. I'm on that subscription plan at this point, but I just don't leave reviews and I feel bad. You're making me feel even worse for the brands that I love. Why are reviews so hard to obtain?
I think it's an individual choice, sort of what's important to them, where they're spending their time. But outside of what we do as a business, I'd implore someone, though, especially if it's a small company, to leave a review. It does so much for them. And if someone here doesn't work on Amazon and potentially they're a consumer just listening, reviews are just one of the many things that people put into an Amazon listing. It's their pictures, it's the length of the title, it's the keywords. This is their baby, this is their source of income. It's absolutely important. So, whether it's a podcast or a product, I think it's almost our responsibility as consumers to support the brands that we like. And then to be fair, because we see this at TestSquared, sometimes things aren't great and people do get those negative reviews. And it's also your right to share that experience with people so they can be warned as well. But I think leaving a review is almost as social contract as an online shopper now.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We always see these things go viral on Instagram where everyone says it's free to support your friends' local businesses and small businesses. And that's true. And a review is one such example of that. I've recently gotten into the habit for service providers. I see how much a local plumber, a local electrician hustles. And for us as consumers, this is very important, Adam. Talk to us about that importance, because you and I both know it as consumers, but even from a business perspective, you've grown a successful brand. How influential are those reviews in a world where there are so many other ways to optimize our listings?
It's critical. It's the ultimate point for consumer trust. It's brand integrity. It means everything for that brand to receive that positive review. And it doesn't have to be a 5-star review. A good, honest 3 or 4-star review, it means that someone has consumed that product, they've used that product, they've shared that experience. It allows them to grow the business. It allows them to potentially bring more offerings to market, and it social proofs their concept. I just couldn't stress the importance. And I love what you were saying, Brian, specifically about the people that we work with, like in the service industries, that might come to our home and do something that we really need help with, to support them. We have nothing to do with that. But yeah, I think for everybody in all walks of life is important.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the how, because that's where the rocket science, in my opinion, comes in. I don't know how the heck you get reviews, Adam. I'll just put it out there that one of the ways I see Amazon brands in particular try to get reviews is I get these little business cards that says like, hey, if you really liked it, leave a 5-star review. It doesn't move the needle for me personally as an effective call to action. So what is that broader landscape of the different ways to get reviews? And then I'm going to push you. I want to go into TestSquared, because I know you're really successful at what you do as far as your approach to getting reviews as well.
Yeah, we do things a little bit differently. So an e-commerce brand is going to engage with us. And what we have to do is we actually have to vet them and make sure they're legitimate, so they can't just sign up for that. It's really important. And then what they'll do is they'll list a product with us. And if we cannot support that product, we're going to let them know. And what this means for a brand is that they'll list, say, the bottle of vitamins. We have supplements, and health and beauty are hands down number one. They'll list the supplement. They might be a new SKU or a new brand. And what we're going to do is we're going to match someone in a category that's going to consume that product organically. They're going to make a verified purchase on Amazon, which is also important to the algorithm. This consumer is reimbursed for that purchase. And again, still in guidelines with the FTC requirements and the Amazon policy. And then what they do is they disclose that they leave a review. They do not have to leave a review. We do not ask them to leave a review. We put no pressure on them whatsoever. So everything is above board, honest, and ethical. But what we're doing is we're helping social proof that. And I have one really interesting story where this was a supplement. It's an appetite suppressant. It's called Garcinia. And there was a consumer expectation it would help them lose weight. So the review was not very positive. However, it helped change the listing to meet expectations of the consumers. And they weren't misadvertising by any stretch of the imagination, but the testing and the review process gives a brand really good, actionable feedback that they can adjust to help support their clients even better. But that's the way we do it. And then there's so many other ways people can get reviews if you'd like me to go into that as well.
Yeah, Adam, I'd love for you to talk about some of those because, and also with your perspective, just because you've seen so many different angles, what are some of those ones that work a little bit better? What are some of those ones that you've just seen? No, everyone does it because they feel like they should. The equivalent of every single YouTuber saying, hey, if you like this video, like, follow, and subscribe.
Yeah, I think, the cards in your choice, they aren't immediately actionable. They're in line with the policy. So I think that's one of the best ways to actually get reviews because you're doing this, there's this anonymity when you're doing that. But I think it's most important to watch out for the brands using the black hat tactics, like where they're emailing you directly asking for your phone number or your email address. They're not supposed to do that whatsoever. There's supposed to be a wall up there. But I think that almost that poignant thank you or the card in the package is actually the best, most authentic way to do that. And I think using tools like FakeSpot, if you're skeptical about a company, its product, the item that you're purchasing, go to FakeSpot. Just drop the Amazon URL in there. It's going to give it an academic grade, and you can make a decision as a consumer if you want to work with a company or purchase from a company that's being disingenuous or purchase from a company that's being authentic in the way they're going to market.
Yeah, I think there's so many interesting points that you've made, Adam, that you live in this world. Probably other people don't appreciate the finer details you call out. I mean, it just sounds to me like you take compliance so seriously and the ethics that go in line with that compliance. You brought up black hat tactics, and I used to work in the world of SEO, and we love talking about white hat SEO tactics and black hat SEO tactics. And what I always, the counter argument that I kind of made for search engines was, to a degree, they incentivize black hat strategies because they let them work. And of course, that's why people are doing them because, if you want to go up in the rankings, this is what you need to do. Of course, there's those ethical considerations as well. Talk to us about what that means for people who have never been in that world. What do these black hat strategies look like? Why do people do them? And then importantly, shine the light on the compliance and ethical considerations that obviously you found a way to play nicely with in a way that a rising tide lifts all boats, which is one of our founding mottos behind this show.
As with me, and it's interesting, so many points there. I think a lot of companies aren't being disingenuous. The market is so crowded and so saturated. Some of those like search engine strategies where you're I forget that term, where you sort of like get onto the tail of someone else's name that is not allowed but allowed by Google. You almost have to engage in that. And I feel like some brands are almost pushed to the review farms where they're just like smashing a whole bunch of reviews into e-commerce sites. And again, not because they're bad, people are making bad decisions. They just need to make a little bit of noise. Because I've been there too, where because Google needs money, so I had to give them some money and silly there. But we do things a little bit differently. Like we offer affiliates $100 for every SKU they refer that is listed with us. So we do things that are really clear. It's in the light. Because even for me in this space, and we're one of a few companies that do this, maybe one of one or one of two, that it's just really important to let people know about us, what we do. But even in our very small segment, it is super crowded. So using alternative, honest tactics, I think it's important. And I think it pays off in the long run, just not as a company, but as a citizen.
Yeah, I'm curious how much of what you see in the e-commerce world is a result of consequences, of how many people have gotten into it. And maybe, if you and I, let's go back to the hat analogy. If you and I wanted to start a hat brand, how the heck are we supposed to compete? We start out with literally 0 reviews and everybody else has thousands. Of course, we're going to look for the shortcut in order to get reviews. And I would imagine some really honest people do fall down that trap and fall for the black hat stuff. Is there a consequence there? Are there consequences that make people say, okay, learn that lesson, let's do things the right way? How much of your work revolves around the world of consequences?
We have had clients that have been sort of a victim of those consequences, but now the consequences are significant. In October, the FTC is alluding to this. They released a regulatory change where it's $54,000 per infraction for a fake review. That's a review, and the brand is responsible for that action, not the person posting the review, even if they were incentivized. That's critical. And then the big one is obviously you can lose your listing on Amazon, and Amazon and Shopify and other sites are starting to clean those reviews up a little bit. And what I've learned, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it looks like it's more of like a historical drawback versus going in there almost like methodically and removing reviews. But yeah, you can blow up your brand. Anybody's worked on Amazon, it's a lift. You have to have your trademark, your LLC, or however you're incorporated intact, your EIN. I mean, your business has to be super squared away and buttoned up. And to blow it up because of a couple of reviews, it's not good. Then you're starting all over again. You have to re-register your brand, potentially under a new name. It's not good. So the consequences are there. And we want to help, whether it's an existing brand and especially the new brands who are listing, do things the right way and get the most traction.
Yeah, Adam, I really want to zoom out because as much as you and I are talking about reviews here today, I want to make it really clear that we're not getting reviews for review's sake. We're getting reviews because it fosters business growth. It fosters market penetration. I'd love to hear your perspective on that, not only as the founder of TestSquared, but the founder of a successful brand even before you started TestSquared, because you talk about, paying for Google ads. That's one way to market. Paying for Amazon ads. That's another way to become a sponsored listing. How much do reviews factor into the marketing mix, and how we can measure the effectiveness of an ad campaign? Is there an equivalent to managing the effectiveness of a review campaign, if we call it that?
That's great. I think there's two companies that can quantify that really well. It's Helium 10 and Jungle Scout. So if someone's not familiar with Amazon, there are many components that go into your listing's health. It's the length of the title, it's the type of keywords, it's the number of keywords, it's the images, it is the review, and there's sort of this amalgamation that comes together that creates that listing quality. So you can quantify that on those two vehicles, Jungle Scout and Helium 10, really quickly. You can drop, and they have, I think, a lot of free services where you can drop a listing in there and it will give you a score of your listing quality. And if you don't have enough keywords and your title's less than 150 characters and you have 5 reviews, it's going to grade you on that and show you where to fix it. And Brian said something very interesting, like a review campaign is I think really what people come to us for. We don't work on a reoccurring model. Everything is really, really clear. Someone will come to us with a specific SKU. It's usually a relaunch or a new SKU, and they're coming into us like, hey, we need 5 or 15 reviews, ideally over a period of time. Again, we're transparent. We can't guarantee the review. They get usually 80%, usually more of the reviews depending on the product. But yeah, you could absolutely quantify that now. And then the impact, and then you go back to those vehicles, you make those adjustments, and that listing quality score goes up. And then in theory, you should see your SKU maybe go from page 4 to page 2 on Amazon. And it's significantly less than, buying those Amazon ads, which it can get pretty expensive, frankly.
Yeah, for sure. Adam, it's actually exciting hearing the way you talk about these things, quite frankly, because what I really think about is there must be a tipping point. Is that if I already have 20,000 reviews, it seems to me as a consumer like reviews beget more reviews because people are just more likely. The other day I was shopping for a shoe rack and I so unfairly was judging a few of the listings. The products looked great, but one of them in particular stands out. It had 2 reviews. Adam, I wasn't willing to be presumably the third customer to ever buy it. What do those beginnings look like? Because I would imagine that 0 is the hardest part, because even if you get 1, that's a cause to celebrate, but you still only have 1 review. If you get 2, the point is going 0 to 1 is so hard. What's that tipping point, and how the heck do we get to that tipping point? And is it a tipping point? I guess that's an underlying assumption of mine. Is it true that that's a tipping point?
In theory, with people are leaning from Amazon, 20 reviews is the tipping point where you're going to gain sales velocity. And I mean, your observation, more than I do, I think, on this is that those reviews do beget future reviews. Absolutely. Because you think you are kind of the third customer, but it does build upon itself. And then, I mean, if you have like a whole bunch of SKUs, it's hard to ask your friends and family to buy like every single one of your products. But it's really important, I think, as a new brand to get out of the gate really quickly with the verified purchases and with the reviews. And I think it's Mary Ruth's brand, not a client at all, but she had a really great origin story when she started, where I forget, there was a specific number of products, these holistic vitamins or tinctures they were selling, and they asked friends and family to buy them, and it got them to the top of their page really early on and built early sales momentum. But I mean, you've really got to get out there. But even before the review, that listing has to be perfect. I mean, it just has to be dialed in, or you could have all the reviews in the world, but if your pictures stink and your titles doesn't make any sense and you're making claims that aren't quite true, you're going to have bigger problems.
Yeah, for sure. In full transparency, it's the number one piece of advice when a new podcaster comes to me and they say, "What's your best piece of advice?" I say, yeah, launch with 10 episodes, that there's something for people to bite into, and get to 50 reviews as quickly as possible, no matter how many people you have to personally. My style is personal video messages. I will just send personal video messages asking people who I know and who might find my podcast valuable, please do this. And I think that it's that sort of approach that we have to take. And I love the fact that you point out sales velocity. It's a real thing that we have to pay attention to. Get there as quickly as possible, obviously ethically, which leads me to the kind of the other chicken and the egg question that I want to ask you is, obviously you focus on both sides of the coin, the sellers that have these SKUs, these products, but also the consumers, the ones who are likely to leave reviews. How the heck, Adam, when you started TestSquared, did you solve that both sides of the coin equation? Because both seem to me to be equally important with regards to what you're doing.
That it's so funny. That's my wife and I were calling it that when the company was started, was sort of the chicken, the egg, where do we start? And when I was sort of soft launching and telling this to people, many people want to be testers. That getting a tester is absolutely not a problem. In fact, we had to stop, and that's gated for now. But the quality of the tester is really critical. So when it's ungated, someone signed up and they're vetted by us. They have to be. We need to know, one, they're a real person. They are going to purchase on the Amazon marketplace in the United States. They have made reviews before. They're sort of a responsible consumer. But what I've noticed when you sort of dig into these folks is that they're usually influencers themselves, or they're starting to build a voice, and they take it really seriously. It's like we don't support books, and I was telling a story recently where we supported one book. It was humor in it. I said, we could probably do this, and this guy, the author, was wonderful. He's like, I want to get like 50 reviews. I'm like, we absolutely can't do that. I probably get you 5 out of our whole tester bank, if everything works out perfect. And again, can't technically promise the review, but they got the reviews. They weren't even 5-star reviews, but the tester it's never the problem. It's just making sure they're a real person. Because I have people trying to like infiltrate the site just to get free stuff, and that's not who we want at all. Our clients aren't going to want that. And if someone ends up electing to leave a review, usually it's a pretty good, it's a thoughtful review, whether it's a sentence or two to something much more extensive, depending on the product.
Yeah, Adam, it's fun to ask you this next question, because I'm asking it not only for you as the founder of TestSquared, but knowing what you did with Alpine Dam as well, is how important on Amazon, you and I keep talking about SKUs and reviews of a specific product, but I guess if I zoom out, how important is the brand, the overarching brand on Amazon? Because I'll admit, I have a lot of brand loyalty in life. My personal purchases is, if something is a Boston-based company, holy cow, I will not only buy their stuff, I will tell everybody that they are based out of Boston. It's why Life is Good. That's like one of my favorite Boston-based brands. And so I have brand loyalty in all these different ways. On Amazon, though, I just, I do what everybody else does. I search for what I need. I look at how many reviews there are and if they're good. How important is that? As someone who built an incredible brand on Amazon, is it important to think about things strategically from the brand level, or is it just that product by product level?
With my story of the Alpine Dam, I think building the brand is important. And it's silly stuff like joining the brand registry, making sure you have your trademark, having a nice brand landing page. and being authentic in your story on Amazon. And I've leveraged those cards as well, sending those notes to people, letting them know it's a real company. You know, we're a California brand, we're located here, we're named after a feature on Mount Tam, and it's a really wonderful place. And doing things differently. And even if you're an Amazon brand, like with Alpine Dam, we'd go to, they had this great event, they still have it, called Biketoberfest. We put a tent up and sell hats on the weekends. You know, there's little markets all around where we live, and we would go there and sell hats. And when we were starting to get out in public and do things, the Amazon purchases went up, which was really interesting. And I started to get reviews. And this is way, way before TestSquared and before the brand or the review environment was so volatile. And then we even started giving out free hats and say, hey, if you have opportunity, you know, take a picture, post it on Instagram. And sometimes we get some posts and some likes, but I was doing things unconventionally. And with TestSquared, there was this 2 points came together, was that we're selling off Amazon, but it absolutely impacted the Amazon sales. And like you were saying earlier, those reviews they got more reviews. It was, I think the brand is so critical. And like you said, with the Boston connection, is to also be hyper local. If you can be an Amazon brand and you could target your Instagram ads to your specific geography and tell your story. And if you're driving all your traffic to Amazon and you don't use the Shopify site, so be it. But yeah, I think building the brand and being authentic is critical.
Yeah, Adam, there's so much good stuff that I would love. I think you and I could easily do a 5 or 6 hour episode together. But knowing that time would run by quickly with you here today, I want to totally switch gears and squeeze a couple more questions in, because I want to talk to Adam, the fellow entrepreneur, as well. Because just off air, you and I were joking about weather and about some hobbies as well. And I know how important endurance sport is to you. I'm so curious, because as someone who, anytime I go for a run, I think to myself every step of the way, this is awful. Oh, this is awful. But if you have me chase a tennis ball, I'll do it for 7 hours very happily and go completely 100% out. So as someone who has embraced endurance sport in your life, how has that factored into the way that you see the world, the way that you operate as an entrepreneur? And I'd love to hear how that trickles into your actual business practices as well.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. It took me a while to recognize this in myself, my career, and I've been lucky. I've worked with a lot of people who are significantly smarter than me and went to fancier schools and everything. But something I think, like being endurance sports and running, bike racing, and now I swim, and it's just that like I can put my head down and work. Like I can really concentrate and get things done, which I pride myself on. I have this like yellow legal pad that I start my day with, and I'll set these little goals for myself, and I will put my head down. And I always imagine that there's a new competitor coming up that's going to come out and they're going to outwork us or make a nicer site or do something a little bit different. So I just love that kind of little bit. It's not a negative word, but I love that grind of just getting it done and doing it. It's like even this morning I got up pretty early to get a swim in, and did I really wanted to be at the pool? No. But when I got out, I felt like $1 million. And same thing when I started my day today. I was like, all right, I had my cup of coffee. I'm like, I'm ready to go. And I got this block of time done, and I just was so satisfied because I accomplished a few things I really needed to do.
Yes, I love that perspective. Adam, my inner dialogue is when I'm doing anything hard, I always remind myself most other people would quit in this moment, and that's why I'm going to keep on going. And I love how much that's worked its way into the way that you operate as an entrepreneur. And sticking to that theme of talking to you as a fellow entrepreneur, I always ask this question at the end of every interview, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and also knowing that we're not just talking about reviews today. So much of what you bring to the table is just a real understanding and appreciation and work ethic and honesty and transparency that goes into the way that you run your businesses. What's that one piece of advice that you want to leave listeners with today?
It was almost two, but one's find a muse. It doesn't have to be in your brand or what you do. There's a company that you admire that does things really, really well, and they could be making spaceships or whatever. It doesn't even matter. Just use that for inspiration. That works for me because there's some ones I just think are spectacular. but now it's just market differently. You do not have to dump money into Google or Reddit ads and just throw everything away. Like, just be really creative, whether you're anchoring your URL on sites like Crunchbase and just going through the internet and being really different. Like at TestSquared, we have an affiliate campaign where we literally give $100 for every listing. It's completely different, and it sounds nuts. It is so much more cost effective than a Google ad, and it allows that influencer to build and deepen their relationship. So I just think market differently, throw your ideas at AI, like validate them, just get really aggressive and do things that your competition is not doing. And like with Alpine Dam, this is so crazy, we gave free hats out in the parking lot of the store Sports Basement where Alpine Dam was sold. Before they were sold there, before I asked for a meeting with the buyer, people were wearing hats in the store. Call up a couple weeks later, got a meeting with the buyer, broke into the store, ended up being in all their locations after a few months because we had hats on heads. That was like the joke, hats on heads. And just do it differently and just live with integrity. And I think it all works out.
Boom. That right there, Adam. I always know how difficult of a question it is to answer such a broad thing. Like, what's your one best piece of advice? You nailed it there. And I love that hats on heads example, because that's a living example of let's just make an impact. Let's not talk. Let's not theorize. Let's not wait for the perfect solution. Let's just put hats on heads. And sometimes it really is that simple, but it comes with allowing yourself to think differently. And you are such a shining example of that. I'm so in awe. You heard at the very top of today's episode how I tease listeners about my admiration for the work that you do. And Adam, I think that you're doing really impactful work to bring honest, ethical, incredible brands to the forefront of their industries. So for listeners who want to check out the work that you're doing, I wish you were in the podcasting space. Please expand horizontally at some point in the future, Adam. But for listeners who want to check out all the great work that you're doing, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, you can just email me. It's adam@testsquared.com. It's really my email address. So I will happily answer anything. If you're starting out, I can help point you in the right direction. And then the website is www.testsquared.com.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. You also heard Adam's dropping his personal email address. As someone who's emailed with him, that really goes directly to him. So don't be shy in reaching out. Most people are shy. It's a really easy way to stand out. So Adam, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
And Brian, I appreciate your kindness and your time. Thank you so much.